It's been almost 2 weeks since that deadly factory collapse at Rana Plaza in Bangladesh that killed more than 300 people. Thousands were buried in the rubble and many are still missing. It's the worst industrial disaster in Bangladeshi history. Rescue officials have given up hope of finding more survivors, and heavy machinery has been brought in to begin cleaning up the massive piles of concrete and rubble, all that remains of the collapsed building. The Prime Minister visited the disaster site this week as family members held up pictures of their loved ones. This woman says her daughter was the provider in her family. Another woman who was working alongside her mother when the accident occurred said her mother is among the missing. The building's owner, Mohammed Sohail Rana, appeared in court earlier this week, met by an angry crowd yelling, "Hang him, hang him." He could face the death penalty for his role in the accident. Demonstrators marking May Day called on Western retailers supplied by factories at Rana Plaza to do more to protect workers and pay higher wages. Many retailers have been criticized for denying their ties to the more than 5 factories affected by the collapse. A couple have promised compensation for the victims, but protesters are demanding that more be done. Bangladesh's garment industry is the biggest in the world next to China. It accounts for more than 80% of the country's exports, worth $20 billion. It's also rife with poor working conditions, low wages, and corruption, where politics and factory owners are caught up in a business where the people at the top get richer and the workers struggle for survival. Sanchita Saxena is the Associate Director at the Center for South Asian Studies at UC Berkeley. She joins us now via Skype. Sanchita, the factory's owner, Mohammed Sohail Rana, had political contacts. How much does the relationship between industry and politics play into the conditions that led to the building collapse and workplace standards generally?
So Bangladesh, historically, the garment sector industrialists have had a close relationship with politicians. Even now, many of the members of parliament are garment sector industrialists themselves. However, in the formal sector, over the last few years, both the private sector and the government have worked together to make certain policy changes at the national level and certain factory level improvements. But where the kind of the two areas that are really impeding changes in factory conditions are really, one, that the pressure that the owners are facing constantly with from the Western brands. So they are being asked to deliver more in a more faster and at lower cost. Their firms are sort of over capacity, and so they're forcing them to go to subcontracting firms. These subcontractors, which is some of the ones that were present in the Rana Plaza, as well as the one that was in the news back in November with the fire that killed over 100 people, these subcontracting factories, it's very hard to monitor their conditions. It's hard to enforce any regulation. So they have completely fallen out of the cracks. The other thing that's tied to this is the lack of capacity for this enforcement. There are hundreds and hundreds of factories that fall under the subcontracting area, and they are just completely out of the mainstream.
Now, as I mentioned at the top, except for maybe a couple of exceptions, retailers by and large in the U.S. and Europe have distanced themselves from the disaster, saying they had no contracts with manufacturers at the Rana Plaza. So what does that mean? Does it mean they have no responsibility at all?
No, of course not. Of course, Western retailers need to be held accountable. They, in fact, could have very well not known that their garments were being produced in some of these subcontracting factories. But the real issue is of responsibility, where the demands and the way the sourcing decision and the structure is, the demands on factory owners in Bangladesh are simply too much. As I said, they're expected to produce too much in a very quick amount of time. So this is what often leads them to cut corners and to engage in practices that are naturally going to be unsafe.
This collapse seems to have galvanized the opposition, labor groups and ordinary Bangladeshis. Do you think this anger will dissipate quickly, or do you believe it will spur change in the way Bangladesh regulates factories and working conditions?
So the Bangladesh labor groups and civil society has been very active. They've been active, they're very vocal, they're very visible. They've been active before this tragedy, and they will continue to be. But the two areas which will really work to improve conditions, one is that the role of labor is certainly important through union activity and labor organizations at the factory level, where they are able to push for changes. And that is happening a little bit in the organized sector. However, what is even more crucial is a role of labor at the national level policy making. The second thing is, as I said, the incentives of both the way the sourcing decisions are made and international trade. The incentive structure needs to be changed, where owners don't feel that they're completely being squeezed and that they have to sacrifice health and safety in order to remain competitive.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your insights. Sanchita Saxena is a former public policy scholar at the Wilson Center. Visit our experts page where you can find more about her.
Now on U.S. airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories. World news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.